Michaels, thanks so much for joining us today. We have got Shannon over from American Crafts who's going to be walking us through some really cool color pour resin projects. So we're so excited you guys took some time out of your day to join us, and we can't wait to show you this fun new craft. Chime in with any questions that you guys might have throughout the process. Rachel from American Crafts is going to be kind of helping us get those questions answered, so don't be shy, jump in. But let's kick it off. Everybody tell us a little bit about where you're from. We want to hear from you guys. We're so excited to have y'all today.
Hey, everybody. Ooh, lots of places.
Yeah, sounds like we've got people all over the US. And to answer the first question I saw, yes, this will be recorded. This will be on michaels.com tomorrow. So please check back in. You can always rewatch this if you have any questions at home. Anyway, Shannon, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, great. Hey, we're just going to get started. I am Shannon Kendall, and I work at American Crafts as the in-house project design team manager. It's a mouthful, but what I get to do is work with amazing crafting products to make beautiful things for marketing, social media, and I love it when I get a chance to teach a class like this because it doesn't happen super often, and I just love it. I miss it. I used to teach all the time, and now I don't get as many opportunities to. So I'm really glad you guys are joining me for this resin class, and I'm excited to show you resin because it's super easy to use, and I think sometimes at first glance, people are a little intimidated by it, thinking it might be harder than it actually is. So I'm glad we get this chance from Michaels. Thank you, Michaels, for letting us show you how easy and fun it is to use resin. I've been doing this at home, prepping for my classes, and my kids are now, they're all teenagers and older, but they are all super excited and they want me to teach them how to do it too. They've been watching me over my shoulder while I've been working. So I'm excited to show you today. Maybe my kids will join and watch too. I don't know. They might be actually. So for any of you that were in my last Michaels resin class, we're going to do some same things and some new things. So stick around to the end. We're going to do a geode pour at the end, which we didn't do last time, and I'm excited to show you how that looks. Those are really fun to do. But I want to start by kind of showing you the basics of resin and kind of how to get started and what you need. So the first thing you need is resin. So the resin that we're using is from Michaels today, and it's the amazing clear cast resin. And it's important for what we're doing today that you make sure your resin that you get is the clear kind. There's some kinds that cure white, and we want the kind that cures clear. So it's got two parts, an A and a B, and when they combine together, science magic happens, and it starts to cure and harden into a permanent hard resin piece. So what I like to do is, if the two parts get together, then they start that chemical reaction of hardening. So to keep it all clear for myself, I label my little cups A and B, and I label my lids A and B. That's just a little tip for you, because I don't want to put my B cap on my A and then have it cure to the top of my lid, or mix up my cups if I didn't clean them super well and it starts to cure and get chunky and weird. So that's a good thing that a little tip for you. I just used a Sharpie and I just mark it right on there. Okay, so we're gonna start mixing our resin right off, but important, this stuff is so sticky. It is crazy sticky. So you're gonna want to protect your work surface. Right here I have just a piece of parchment paper, so you can see both kinds. This I just pulled out of my pantry. And then this is just a silicone mat that I had that's a craft mat. So you could use anything like that. The silicone mat is kind of nice because when the resin hardens on it, you can just peel it off and it comes right off like a mold. The parchment is nice too because you can just throw it away when you're done, and it's not very expensive. The other thing you need is gloves. So these are just gloves that I had out of an old hair dye kit from when one of my daughters had blue hair and she had extra gloves. But you can use any glove that you have. You can use gloves you purchase, kitchen gloves, cooking gloves, just anything to protect your hands, because everything you touch with resin, once you get started, it's going to be sticky. So also, I'm going to push my glasses up right now before I get resin on my hands, because I always have to be careful not to touch my phone if I'm watching a show while I'm doing resin, or touch my glasses or anything, because it is sticky. There is a way to clean it up. You just use a little bit of rubbing alcohol on a cotton ball, paper towel, or baby wipe, but it is really sticky, so I just try to avoid it. Okay, so the trick with the resin, A and B, we're gonna do equal parts. So the first thing we're gonna make today is a little mold. So we're gonna do all one color. So I'm just gonna start by pouring A into my A cup. And there's little lines on the side of the cup. So if you were doing a smaller pour, which I'll show you on our next project, you can use the little lines and just make sure that it's equal. Sometimes I don't even use the little lines. I just pour it in, I get down low and I look on the side and just make sure that it's the same. I get the B side in. I'm gonna look down on the side to make sure I'm the same. And if it's a little too much, like I just did, I just pour a little bit back in the jar. Okay. Okay, we're looking good. So simple, right? Okay, I'm gonna set these aside for a second, and I'm just gonna grab another little plastic cup. These are just like little bathroom cups and a craft stick. Okay, and I'm just gonna get all of the resin in. It doesn't matter if you put part A or B in first. Just transfer it all from your measuring cup into your mixing cup. You know, at home when I do resin too, I always wear an apron, and today I'm not, so hopefully I don't get any on my shirt. We'll see. It's really hard to get out if you get it on your clothes, so I do recommend an apron if you have one. I have one that's all covered in paint and resin and all kinds of stuff. That's my favorite crafting apron. Okay, we got our two parts now together in our cup. Now we're just gonna stir it with the craft stick. So you can see on the overhead camera maybe, I don't know if you can tell, but see all those lines that are starting to happen in there? Here, let me move my hand. See how it's like swirling kind of and cloudy? Okay, so that means that it's starting to mix. So we want to mix it until there's no more cloudiness and it's completely clear. And it takes about 2 to 3 minutes of stirring. And you don't want to stir too fast. Like I have to pace myself because I tend to be a quick stirrer. And I always want to stir it faster than I should because you don't want to work in air bubbles into your resin. So I kind of fold it, stir it, kind of keep my stick in there. And this will feel like the longest 2 to 3 minutes of your life sometimes because you're just slowly stirring resin, and especially on video. Rachel, does anyone have any questions yet?
Yes, I was just about to jump in.
Perfect.
So 2 questions. If there are spills, I know you already mentioned it a little bit, what would you recommend to clean up any of the resin?
So I always have baby wipes. You can't see them because they're off camera, but I have baby wipes and rubbing alcohol that I just keep right next to me. I also keep a garbage can right next to me because I find that it's easier just to toss the sticky bits right there. And you can try with just a plain baby wipe. There's a little bit of alcohol in the baby wipe already. And so it can do a really good job of cleaning it up. And then also, if that's not working, I'll just like dump a little bit of rubbing alcohol. I've dumped it right onto my mat and wiped it up before, and it works really good.
Awesome.
And then I use the baby wipe.
Perfect. And then one other thing, what are you, aside from the gloves, someone wanted to know if you were wearing a protective mask or if that was necessary as you're doing this type of project.
I am not. This resin is pretty low fume. It doesn't really smell strong enough that it bothers me, but if it is bothering you, you could always wear a mask. Sometimes when I've worked with resin in the office, this is kind of an open area I'm in right now, but at home or in the office, if I'm in a small space, I'll turn on a fan just to kind of circulate the air a little bit. But yeah, you can, it's kind of a personal preference whether or not you feel like you need a mask or not. Okay, I don't know if you can see this now, but I've worked in some bubbles, but I'll show you how to get rid of that because I was stirring too fast. But do you see how it's nice and clear again? Sometimes I'll just use my craft stick to pull it out and look at it and see if it's clear. And so to help the bubbles, there's a couple of tricks. I like to tap my cup just on my surface and they'll rise up to the top and pop. Sometimes if you just let it set for a few minutes, the bubbles will rise. And then after we do our project, I can show you a way to do it with the heat tool. So, all right, we're ready. We're gonna do one one color. And so we have these fun things that are available at Michael's. So these are color pour resin stir-ins. And this one is mini confetti, and it's plastic confettis. It comes with 4. I don't know if you can see that very well. And then this one is micro beads, and we're going to use both on this project. So for my sample, it's going to be a little different because I used all of my stars, and now I'm going to use all of my heart confetti. And this confetti is really fun. I don't know if you can see it, but they're little plastic pieces that look like sprinkles. And you want to use these instead of actual sprinkles because these, the color won't bleed out into your resin pour. So if you were using actual sugar sprinkles, they're going to dissolve a little bit in the resin and you're going to get this kind of mucky color in there. So these are really nice because they look like sprinkles, but they are just plastic. So I'm going to dump that whole thing in there. So you don't have to do the whole thing, just depends on what you're working on. This is always the hardest part, getting the lids off with my gloves on. Okay, and these are the little tiny pink micro beads. And I'm just going to pour a little bit of those in as well, right into my cup. I might want more, but I'm going to stir and see. Okay, I'm just going to stir these in. Okay, now I could do it just like that and just leave it clear and get a fun effect, but I'm going to add a dye. So these are little alcohol ink dyes. We have opaques and we have transparent, that they come in sets of 4 colors. So this is the metallic set right here that I pulled the white out of. They're in warms and cools. When you first get them, you're going to want to pierce a hole through the top. Can't tell if this one's been pierced. I think it has. Pierce a hole because it's sealed so that it doesn't leak in shipping. So I just stick a pin in there or a toothpick. I use toothpicks a lot with resin to break it. And then I like to shake it with the cap off and my finger over the tip. And especially with the opaques, you want to give it a good shake because the dye kind of settles down to the bottom of the mixture. Okay, and I don't want this super opaque because I don't want to completely cover up my cute sprinkles and beads that I just put in. So I'm just going to put a few drops. Oh, it isn't pierced. So now you get to see me pierce it. Grab a toothpick. This is when I wish I had an apron on because sometimes it splashes when I pull my toothpick out. Okay, there you go. Now I release the dye. So I'm just going to start with 3 drops and see what that does.
Hey, Shannon, can I ask a question?
Yes,
while you're
definitely.
Someone wanted to know if you can use regular alcohol inks with the resin as well.
Yes, it works great. You can use all different kinds of colorants. I'm going to show you 2 today, but you can experiment and play. Okay, I think 3 was enough. So see how I can pull that up and it just made it a little bit milky, but I can still see my beads and my confetti. Now, since we're doing this project kind of quickly for video, so we can show you a lot in this class, I'm skipping one step that I probably would do if I was at home working with these plastic confettis, and that is that I would let my resin cure for about 15 minutes before I added those in. So it starts to harden for real after about 20 to 30 minutes. But if I wait you can kind of see in my cup here, I'm going to show you on my forward facing camera, that the beads are kind of sinking to the bottom just a little bit. And so if you let your resin cure a little longer, then they will float in there a little bit better and they won't sink to the bottom of your mold. But I'm skipping that step so that I can show you more things today. But that's something you can play with at home when you're working on it. If you have a heavier mix in, then you can let it cure a little bit before you add it to your resin. Okay, so we're going to work with the catch-all dishes mold set, and it comes with 3. And we're going to work with the heart one in a little bit, but this one I'm going to do in a square. And then this one's a little circle dish. Okay, and I'll show you a molded piece out of that later so you can see what it is. So simple, simple, simple. This is a 1-step, just stir stuff in, pour it in your mold. Okay, and I'm just going to pour it straight from my cup. Try to get my hands out of the way. And let it just flow down into the sides.
Hey, Shannon.
Yes.
How much time, as you're working with it there, is there a certain amount of time that's preferable before it starts to harden in the mold? Like, do you have a little bit of time to play around with it?
You do. So it's the same. It cures in about 20 to 30 minutes. It starts to get it's cool when you're holding it in your hand. You can tell, like if I haven't poured everything out of my cup will start to get warm from that chemical reaction. You can actually feel it start to heat up, and then you know you're about out of time, because as soon as it starts to heat up, it starts to harden and it gets really gooey. So like when I would pull my stick out, it would have a big long blobby piece on it, and that's when it gets harder to work with. So I'm just going to add this a little bit more in here.
Great.
So
one more question that might go along with
yeah.
that. You didn't use a release spray beforehand, right? That wasn't necessary?
No, not necessary. It just comes right out of these silicone molds. They're really awesome. So now I'm going to just tap it. I like to do this. I know it's kind of scary at first because you think, oh goodness, I'm going to overflow, but that just makes sure that all those bubbles, it helps the bubbles start to come up, and then it also helps the resin go all the way into every corner of the mold. Now I'm going to take my heat tool. This is just a regular like stamping embossing heat tool, and I'm going to hit that mold with my heat tool. And I don't know if you can see it on camera because it's kind of far away, but those little bubbles are all rising up to the surface and popping, and I'm getting a nice smooth top. Sometimes I'll go around the side of the mold too, because that kind of helps the bubbles rise up, and then hit the top one more time. You see, it doesn't take very long. You don't want to overheat it too much or burn it. And then you would just set that aside. So I'm going to carefully lift it and set it on a level surface. So this is the one that I did before at home. And you can see that I used the stars on this one instead of the heart confetti. They're really cute. And so to get it out of the mold, again, I didn't use any spray, and you can see I can just peel it right back and get our little catch-all dish. Isn't it cute? So you can put little jewelry in there. You can kind of see that my stars kind of sunk down to the rim, but I kind of like that look. And I made sure that some stayed up on the top. It's really cute. So that was our dish. Now, one tip I like to say is, like, if you could feel this, you could feel that there were a few little rough edges just where the edge of my mold and the resin was not perfectly even. You can fix that really easy with a piece of sandpaper. You just spritz it with a little bit of water and then just set it on my surface, and then I just rub the bottom of this so it's flat, and it just smooths out any rough edges that you might have on the bottom of your piece. It's really easy to use. They even make wet sandpaper that holds up a little bit better when you spritz it with water, and it's black. So when you order it from Home Depot or whatever, or if you went to a store to look for it, it would be black sandpaper that's waterproof. So that's our first little project. So what do we do with the extras? You can see I have a little bit of extra left in my cup, and I don't like to waste any resin. So I'm gonna grab this mold. Actually, let me grab this one. So I wanna do the same shape that I'm gonna show you at the end that I did last time. So this mold is a Barrette mold. And it's got a fun rounded edge. This is what it looks like in the packaging. I don't know which camera's on, but this is what it looks like in the packaging, and it comes with some clips, and then you can buy replacement clips on the jewelry aisle. I think we talked about at Michael's, extra alligator hair clips that anything will fit them. And it comes with two kinds of molds. Again, it comes with a rectangular mold. I don't know if you can see that. And then a more of an angled rounded corner triangle-ish mold. So we're going to use this one. And so these small molds are super fun to have around because, like I said, I made a tiny bit too much resin for my catch-all dish, but now I can just put it into this little mold. I'm going to do it kind of at the top of my thing there because we're going to put extras from every project in there, and I'm going to show you what we get at the end. And I'm just using my craft stick to kind of help drizzle it in there. Make sure we get it all over. Sometimes I'll fold my cup a little bit too and make a little spout and just pour. Maybe I'll do that. And I'll show you that more on the Geode. Okay. And I like to get my clips in these little molds a little bit full. It's a little tricky, but once you get the hang of it, it's not that hard, where you can just kind of have it bubble up over the edge of the mold a little bit, because that way, if it has any sinking when it's curing, I have still a flat surface. So there's our first little Barrette mold that we're gonna set aside and we'll use again in a minute. So if I wanted to, I could just collect the rest of this and put it in something else. There's a tiny bit left in there. Or if you don't care, you can just throw this cup away. Or if you want to reuse your cup, you could wipe it out with a baby wipe and reuse your cup. But I'm just going to throw mine away for speed purposes. Okay, next project we're going to do is using the little heart mold. So if you were in my last class, you've seen this one before, but I like showing this project because it really shows how to do layering in a mold with resin, one layer at a time when you want to keep everything separated. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to start with our first layer. Yeah, I'm going to mix more resin than you would actually mix to do this, because what you're going to do, we're going to work in layers, and you'd let each layer cure for about an hour before you put the next layer in. But since we're doing this on video, I have some samples that are already ready. So I'm just going to make all my resin so I can show you really quickly, but you would want to make smaller batches for this when you're doing it at home. Okay, so same thing. I'm going to get my A and B side. Just going to fill my cups. This is a good spot. Again, Rachel, I was just going to say we're on the same page.
While you're doing that,
yes.
Would any of these be dishwasher safe or washable after they cure?
They are washable. I'm not certain about dishwasher safe. Let me see if this says. You know, it says for more information, read the sheet that's inside it, and I don't have that. So I might have to research that one. But they are washable, like in soap and water. It's like a hard plastic. That's what you're left with at the very end. And so it seems to me it would be dishwasher safe if you put it on the top rack, like anything else plastic. But I haven't personally tried it. So there's the caveat. I'm not sure for sure.
And one more thing, as you're working through that, depending on your project, how do you gauge how much resin needs to go in those cups?
You know, it's tricky a little bit because I've had to guess. And so I have this secret super talent from crafting so much. my kids say is really weird, but I can like look at something and know how many inches it is. And I can kind of look at things and kind of have an idea of what volume I need. But I would say start with a little less because it's always easier to add more. But if you do end up with too much, like I said, just put it in another mold and make something else cool out of it. I'm going to show you at the end a bunch of cool things I made with my extras because I don't always guess perfectly. It's just kind of best guess. If it's a tiny little mold, like you saw when I poured that Barrette, it barely took any. It was just like a tiny little bit of scrap of my resin. So you barely need any. So for something like that, I would probably do like the smallest line on the cup and start there. This one is going to be multiple layers and multiple colors. So I did a really full cup. But I wouldn't do it that way if I was letting it cure between each layer, like I said. So in a minute, I'm going to do a tray pour that's fills a whole tray, and that one takes a lot. In fact, I'm going to use a bigger cup than these little bathroom cups, just because I know it's a bigger area. It's going to take more resin. It's kind of a learning curve a little bit with that part of it, but once you get the hang of it, you'll see that you get it almost always right on. Last time when I taught, actually, I didn't quite make enough in my ocean pour that I did in the tray, and it was okay. I just added a little bit more resin after the class, and then it looked great. So very forgiving.
That's great. I think there's one more that a few people have asked is whether or not the resin you're using is food safe, and if there is resin available that would be food safe.
I'm not sure about that either. I don't know if someone at Michael's has that access to that information or not. I'm not sure about food safety.
I don't have that answer right now. That's a great one. Let me see if I can't get an answer for you guys before the end of the class.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one either. I have made a cake plate top with it, so I hope it's food safe, but I guess that my cupcakes were in little wrappers anyway, so it would be okay. Okay, I'm almost clear again. Are there any more questions, Rachel, that I can do real quick while I divide?
Let's see. There were a few duplicates just on what you recommended with in terms of the colorant that goes in and what that needs to be.
Okay, so I've mostly worked with alcohol inks or the color pour resin dyes, which are like a little alcohol ink. I assume you could try anything that has color and see what happens. I would just do a little batch and then just try it and see what happens. And then I've also used mica powder, which we're going to use on another project. And sometimes I just use whatever I'm adding. So if I'm doing something super sparkly, like my earrings, I don't know if you can see my earrings, but they are gold glitter. There. And I just didn't use any colorant in those. I just put a whole bunch of glitter in there, and the glitter made the color that I was looking for.
Great. Two more. Do you have time for two more? Okay.
I do.
So I know you'd commented on how long you have to kind of play around with it once it's mixed, but as you're doing the two separate pours, when they're still in the same when they're still in separate cups, how long can those sit separately like that?
They can sit until it starts to cure. So half hour, probably max. If you're using, sometimes I've worked with the spinet resin before, the spinet for the tumblers by We Are Memory Keepers. And that one dries a little bit faster. So it only has about 20 minutes. These are about a half an hour.
Great. And then the last one before you continue, someone wanted to do this with students, and they're wondering if they have small molds, about how much time would you recommend that they set aside for that project?
That is the tricky part about teaching this in a class, that they do, to be fully cured completely, it needs 24 hours, but it needs about an hour to set enough to do another layer. So I would say probably an hour before you want to really move that mold, because it's going to be really fluid until then. If you prepared and you set your finished mold like in a box or something that they could carefully lift and take home, I think that that would work. If I was teaching it that way to a live class where they were actually hands-on, that's probably what I would do, just so they have a flat level surface to put it on. It's a good question. Okay, so now I'm just dividing. I've mixed my big batch. Like I said, you would just do a bunch of little batches, but I'm going to do big batches. Okay, and just divide my cups. Now I'm going to color each one a little bit different. We're first going to start with our bottom layer. So I'm going to build up an ocean scene in this mold. So this is my blue transparent dye. I'm going to put my lid on it. It's still, my finger on the tip. It still gets really inky. That's just part of the deal of working with inks, right? Anyone who's worked with inks knows that. And I just squirted my work surface with it so you can see that it's just messy business, but that's okay. And I just put a few drops in there, and you can see the difference between that and the white, hopefully, that it's really translucent. And now if you wanted to leave it streaky like that, you could. Or you can keep mixing the dye in to get a more uniform color. Okay. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I just want this to go in the sides of my mold up to, I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a little like surface that becomes the bottom of the mold, and then it goes down into the lip that becomes the sides. So I just want it to go in the side. So I'm going to actually hold my mold in my hand and kind of squeeze it a little bit. If it gets on the bottom, it's okay. But I'm going to aim it toward those sides just to make cleanup easier on myself. Kind of spin it around, get it to go down in the sides. And give it a tap and see where we're at. You can kind of see on the sides of the mold if you have a big bubble, like I got a big bubble right there. So I'll just take a toothpick and stick it in there and help that bubble come out to the top. Now you can see that bubble is gone. Okay, I need a smidge more. So I'm gonna keep pouring around in the sides. Ooh, I might have guessed pretty good on my amount. There's that superpower happening. It might just be practice, just enough times of doing it. Okay, now I'm gonna take my craft stick and just push the rest of this resin that got on the base that I don't really want it to be that color down into the sides. I'm going to grab a baby wipe and just wrap it around my finger like this. And I'm gonna just wipe off that top surface because I want that to be different colors. So you can see it's not too hard for the baby wipe to pick it up. I just want to clean this up a little bit. Okay, and you can even kind of stick it under the edge of the mold. Kind of go around it and clean it up a little bit if you're doing multiple colors. Okay, now I would set this aside and I would let it cure for about an hour. And how I tell is I kind of squeeze the sides or tap it, and you can tell that it's ready at that point. So this is the one that I did and prepared ahead. So you can see that my resin is only up until that point right there, and it's not in this bottom part. So now we're going to work there. Okay, just going to set aside my extra and we'll work with that in a minute. All right, next color that I need is a little tiny bit of gold. Actually, I might have too much in there, so I'm going to pour a little out. So I don't need very much. So I'm going to use an opaque gold, but I want it to still be kind of see-through, so I can see the micro beads that I'm going to add. So I'm just going to start with 1 drop, if I can control 1 drop. Come on. Maybe not. I'm going to re-pierce my tip. Stand back so I don't get it on my shirt. Okay. Come on. Oh, the joys of clogged tips. Come on. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cheat it. I've never had a tip clog before, of course. That happens on our live class. You just get it. Nope, it's not going to cooperate. Okay, we might go without the gold. I'll see what I can get. Yes.
Shannon, while you're working on that,
Yes.
will the color of the resin change over time, or does it pretty much stay how you pour it?
It stays. Oh, Jordan has a paper clip. That might work better. Thank you. Ah, there. Thank you. That saved it. Okay. 1 tip drop. Did I answer that completely, Rachel?
I think so. I think that's
okay.
I'll let you know if not.
I was dealing with a technical issue at the same time. Not sure I answered that correctly. Okay. Ended up I wanted 2 dots. So I started with 1 to see where it got me. And I wanted a little bit more, so I added 1 more dot. Okay. Now I'm going to add in from our other set the micro beads that we use, the pink ones. There's some gold ones. So I always should loosen my lids before I put my gloves on. Okay. And this is going to be my sand. I'm going to make a sand layer. So I'm going to put some gold beads in there, stir it up. You could use actual sand. That's really fun to do. You can try stirring really anything into it. As long as whatever you're stirring in there doesn't dissolve, it should work. A little bit more. I want gritty sand. So you can see that I'm not really measuring. I'm just winging it. And that's part of the fun of resin to me, is you just kind of play and you're always pleasantly surprised by what you get when you unmold. It's really fun. My daughter was watching me, my oldest daughter, and she said, oh, I see. So you just have to kind of embrace that it's going to do its thing. And I'm like, yep. Just embrace it. Okay, now for my ocean scene, I only want my resin in the bottom part of my mold here. So I am going to actually prop this up on something. So I just used my little cap. And then I'm going to drizzle it into the bottom part of this mold. You can see these craft sticks come in handy. Okay, I just want my beach just at the bottom of my heart.
Shannon, if you don't have a heat tool, are you able to use anything else like a blow dryer, for example?
You can use a blow dryer. It will move your resin more because there's more heat, air force coming from the blow dryer, but it should work. You can also use, you know, those little propane lighters that you start your barbecue with or your campfires with that have, they're like a long wand. You can use that and just carefully move it over the top. It's the heat that makes the bubbles rise. So that's what you're looking for mostly, is the heat. So I would probably prefer that or a lighter of some sort over a blow dryer. But I do use a blow dryer in making resin if I want to really move my resin and create cool effects that way. Okay, so you can see now, just barely in the bottom, I have my little beach. You kind of see that, hopefully. So I would set that aside, keeping it propped up on something so that it cures down in the bottom and doesn't move too much. Okay, do a little mini cleanup. Okay, so when I was done, then I had this. So it's done, it's cured, it's ready to go. So I'm ready for my next layer. And my next layer is my wave. I want, you know how when waves come up on the shore and they're all foamy and white? So to do that, I'm going to do a different little trick. So I'm going to pour a little bit of clear into the bottom, just like that. You can use a toothpick or a craft stick to kind of move it if it went where you didn't want it to go. And then I'm going to prop it up so it stays in the bottom. And I'm going to take my white dye and I'm actually just going to drop a drop right into my mold. Right like that. I'm going to use my toothpick to kind of move that dye and kind of make it look like that foamy beach wave coming up onto the shore. Hit this one with the heat tool. See how my heat tool is even moving the dye more? A blow dryer will do it even more than that. Okay, so that's the next layer. Easy enough, right? Is it starting to look like an ocean right there? Okay, so I'm going to set that one aside with it propped up. Those little mix-in lids work great for propping up molds. Okay, so now that one has solidified. So here it is from before. And now I just need to do my final back layer. And I want the bottom of this to be opaque. So what I'm going to do, I already have this blue right here. I'm just going to add some more clear to it since I had enough left over. And I'm going to do a variation of that blue for the back. See, I guessed a little wrong. I made a tiny bit too much resin for this one, but that's okay. We're going to make some barrettes with it. Okay, I'm going to put one more drop of blue. And then I want this base layer to be a little bit different than my front layer. So I'm going to add a drop or two of white to just increase the opacity of it. Let's see, 3 drops. We'll see how that does. And you can see how that opaque has now changed that translucent dye. I love the metallic dye kit because you can add it to so many different things. Now you can see I have a really opaque blue. Okay, and it's ready to go. So I'm just going to pour that right into my mold. And this time I'm not going to prop it. I'm just going to pour it all straight in. And again, I like it to come a smidge over the top because it does tend to sink just a tiny, tiny bit when it cures. Tap it, make sure it got all down in the grooves. Hit it with my heat tool. And set it aside to dry. So you can see you didn't need to make very much for each layer. Probably that first layer is the most that you need.
Shannon,
and here's my finished one. Yeah.
How long does each layer need to sit or cure before you continue?
It's about an hour. So this one is a labor of love a little bit because you kind of can work on a layer, work on a different resin project or something else, then come back and check on it and do another layer. I've also had really cool things turned out where I used a mold in multi-layers as I was working on other things. When I just added each color to it as I went with my extras. So it's really cool. So this, you can see I just pulled that rim away. I'm going to turn the mold inside out to get it out. The heart one is a little bit harder to get out, but it's still easy. And there it is. There's our little ocean. I can show this way, I can show this way. I don't know which camera's on. It's hard for me to tell. turns out awesome. I love doing these little mold, ocean scenes. You can do them in other things too. You could do them as coasters. There's coaster molds. You can do a free pour on a piece of wood and have this same effect happen. You do it just a little bit different when you're working in the mold. You do have to let each layer cure when you're working on other things. You don't always have to do that, but if it's in a mold, let it cure between. So I love this little dish. So again, I could smooth the bottom if I wanted to, or just go with it. And then I have some extra, so I'm gonna put it in my little mold over here. So we're gonna add some blue to this mold. You can see I barely thought I had any resin left in that blue. I thought it was pretty well done, but when I scraped the sides, I was able to get enough out to do another barrette. So I'm gonna do blue on that half till that's gone. And then I'm gonna do a little bit of gold, my gold that's left. Some sparkles in there. And the fun thing about using your scraps to make things is that you never know what you're gonna get at the end. And each piece is really unique and different. And I think I'm gonna just add a few drops of white, just like we did on the, and swirl it into that blue and gold with my toothpick. Now the white opaque dye is a little bit heavier than the other dyes, so it should sink to the front. Because this mold we're working from the back up. But if you ever like the back of your barrette mold better, just use that side and glue your clip to the other side. You can do all kinds of fun things with this. Okay, now I'll let that cure. Okay. All right. Yes.
I have 2 barrette questions.
Okay.
So the first was just how fragile are the barrettes once they're cured?
They are sturdy. And I will show you when I unmold the ones I did when I was practicing at home and making my step outs, I'll show you how tough they are. They're really awesome. The plastic is really durable, the resin. It's like a really strong one. And it doesn't bend or anything. It's just really, like you can see on this, I don't know if you can hear that. Nice and firm.
Awesome. And then the second question on the barrettes was, once you take those out of the mold, how are you going to put them onto the barrette backing? Like, what do you use for that?
I prefer E6000 glue, but you could use hot glue, you could use super glue, any strong glue, because you just don't want your clip to come off when you're working your mechanism of your clip. So whatever glue you prefer, I use E6000 when I make them, but that's just my preference. Okay, how are we doing on time? Rachel, do you know? Can you see?
It's 11:43 right now, so.
Okay, perfect. 15 more minutes. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys this one. This was the ocean pour mold that was similar to the heart pour mold that we did in the last class. And if you want to see how I did this one, I know that that class is available online still, I think, correct? Yes, Katie? I think it is. So you can see this one, and it's done with a lot of the same techniques. And I'm going to use this same frame to show you a geode pour. So this frame I got from michaels.com, and it was really affordable. It was awesome, and it's already stained this beautiful color. And I love doing pours without mold sometimes. And this, all I did to prep this is there's a little seam where they built the bottom into it, like right here. And so I just took a clear glue, like an Elmer's glue, and I just put a little bead, ran a little bead of the glue all the way around here and kind of smoothed it in with my finger and then let it dry. Just because I didn't want any resin when I poured in here to kind of eke out the sides and get all over my table. If it did, I guess it's not the end of the world, but I just thought that one little step would just help to protect my work surface. Okay, so we're gonna use this tray. I'm gonna make myself a little bit more room. Set this aside for just a second. Okay, and this one takes kind of a lot of resin. So I'm actually going to use a different little measuring cup. This is a little silicone measuring cup. And I found that for this one, if I do a full one of this, it's usually enough for a tray pour. And this one goes up to 100 milliliters. So I'm just going to pour my resin directly into this and just use my measurements on the side. There's little lines on the side of the silicone cup, like measuring lines. Okay. Are there more questions, Rachel? Because this is just more resin mixing.
Yes, I had one that came in. So someone was wondering if this process would be the same to create jewelry pieces, specifically suspending a photo or some other object within the resin in order to make jewelry.
Yes, and actually this question came up about photos in resin in the last class, and I wasn't 100% certain on the answer because I hadn't done that yet, and so I did some research between then and now. And so I found that you can print and put a photo in the resin, and the same resin will work for it great. You just need to make sure you're either using a print that's sealed or seal it with, most people use Mod Podge, and just do it on the front and the back of the paper. You can actually, I saw some really cool bracelets that were made in a bangle mold, and they just cut a strip of scrapbook paper, Mod Podged both sides of it, laid it in the mold, and then poured the resin in. It turned out really cool. There's tons of cool ideas and inspiration, like with anything crafty out there on YouTube and on Pinterest, and you can kind of look it up and see tips and tricks from people there too. You can suspend dried flowers in this resin. It looks beautiful. So yes, it works great for jewelry. And I actually have some jewelry molds that I made my earrings with. That's just a little jewelry mold pendant. Or you can do them freeform as well. I would just suggest looking up a video on that and watching it, or maybe we can do it in a future class. I'd love to do a jewelry resin class too.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you. Are you able to use flowers also as one of the objects that you suspend for jewelry?
Yes, you can. I've only worked with dried or artificial flowers, so I'm not sure. You just have to do a little test and see if a live flower, if the color would bleed out into your resin or not. I would just do a little test and see what happens. The dried pressed flowers, those don't bleed. They work great. And artificial flowers don't bleed. I'll show you one of those in a second, as soon as I'm done with this tray pour. Okay, I'm gonna hurry this along because I wanna make sure to be done and show you a few other things that I made with the scraps. Okay, so I need to do, I'm gonna do a bunch of different colors, and this is gonna be a totally different color scheme than the blues that we've been kind of working with and the whites. And I'm still using the same supplies that were on the supply list, which was just a set of mica, a set of metallic opaque dyes, and a set of translucent dyes. Okay, so I divided this into 5. I'm actually just going to keep the last layer in my little cup here. And I'm going to make each one a color. And I'm just going to do it all at once. So this first one is going to be my Geode sparkly rocks. So I'm going to do some white, and I was pretty generous. You saw how much white I put in there. Awesome. Okay, that one's ready. And I just go for it with the craft sticks. Okay, and this is the mica powder. And it's really cool to work with. It's got a shiny finish on it. I'm actually gonna do it in this one. And this one is the red. And I just use my craft stick to pick it up. And I never measure, you guys. I just always just dump some in there and stir it and see what happens. It's usually pretty. Oop, I got a little bit in my white, that's okay. Okay, so now you can see, I don't know if you can see that there's a shimmer to that. It's kind of a multifaceted shimmer. It's really pretty. So I like using these micas. Okay, and I'm gonna use a light pink mica in this one. We're gonna do a red color scheme this time instead of the blues.
Hey, Shannon.
Yes.
Have you tried using food coloring as the dye? A few people were wondering that as well. Or if you just recommend what you're doing.
I personally haven't, but I think that people do use it. Like I would say, this is kind of an experimental, fun, try things, kind of a crafting process. And so I would say try it, see what happens, see what you like. Try dropping it in, try stirring it in, try different things. It's always super fun. Okay, and my last layer is going to be black. Since I had these nice dyes, that's what I've just been using. But if you didn't have them, I would say try what you have. Okay, I'm gonna make this black. And I only put a few drops of black in there. Looks really cool when it separates. That was the opaque black dye that came in the metallic set. I'm actually gonna do one more drop. And then we're gonna add all our mix-ins. So sometimes this is how I'll work if I'm doing multiple colors at once. I'll do all my colors, then all my mix-ins. Okay, so for the black, I'm gonna use some holographic black sparkles. They're just little foil flakes. I'm just gonna stir those right in. And then for my white, I'm going to actually use these really cool filler rocks. They're like crushed glass filler rocks that I found at Michael's in the spring floral. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's just like little pretty crushed glass floral filler. And I'm just gonna put it right into my white. And since this is gonna be my geode part, this white will kind of move away from it a little bit when it settles, but I want it really thick with these. I want it to mostly be rock with a little bit of resin around it to hold them in place. So you can see that's getting pretty thick. I actually want this a little bit more translucent. I'm gonna run out of room in my cup, but I'm gonna add a little bit more clear to it. So see how you kind of can play with the color. You just add in a little bit more clear if you find it's too opaque. Add in a little more opaque if it's too clear. It's really fun. Okay. All right, I could probably even put more rocks in there, but I want to get going and show you how this turns out. I do it so it's mostly like a thick, thick paste of rock. Okay, so I'm going to start my geode, but I want a little open spot where I can see the inside of my tray. You know how some rocks have those little holes in the middle? So I'm going to make a little free-form hole. I'm not really centered with this. Let me try and center myself. A little better. Okay, now I think you can see a little better on the overhead. So I just poured some clear that I didn't add any tints to right to the center. And if you want to change how the shape of it is, it's going to kind of move and go where it wants to. But you can take a stick and drag it through. Okay, now I'm going to grab some of my geodes here, my geode rock piece that I made. It's okay if you spill it, you just move it, and I'll show you how to clean it up. When you're working in a tray, it's a little harder to control the edges, but I can show you that it always turns out great. You don't need to worry too bad about it. All right, so I'm just dropping this around this clear spot, on top of it, around it. Now, I'm liking how that's looking. I'm just gonna take my baby wipe and wipe off my tray where I spilled a little bit on the side. And then I'm gonna just add a little bit more rocks. Because I could tell I was gonna want more. So you can add your mix-ins right here too if you want to. Okay. I wanna preserve my center, so I'm just gonna tip my tray a little bit and let it move a little bit. Okay, this was the part my daughter was watching me and she was saying, oh, okay, so you just have to not care where it goes. And I'm like, yep, just let it do its thing. And you can move it around. It's gonna move into each other, but it's gonna be fine. Okay, now I'm gonna do a pink layer around that. I'm gonna make my cup into a spout. I'm just gonna go around with the pink layer. I want to show you at least one of each layer, and then I'll show you my finished one after I kept going with it. Okay, so now I can tip that to get fun shapes. Let the white and the pink run together. Kind of like paint pouring when you're moving it. That's kind of what I'm doing here. Okay, now I'm going to show you a little trick with the pink foil. I can get the lid off. Oh. Note to self, next class, always loosen your lids. Oh, I don't know if I can get it off. Hey, Jordan, can you help me get a lid off? He has his headphones in. All right, I'll show you with the black. It's gonna look a little different because I can't get the pink lid off. But I'm just gonna dip my toothpick right into here, and I'm gonna grab some foil flakes and just drag them through here. You know how geode rocks have those little rivers of sparkle? So I'm just going to make a little river of sparkle. On my final piece, you'll see I did the pink on the pink, which I like, but you know what? We're going to roll with it, and we're going to use black. I can also dip it into my clear This way I have a little more control than just dumping the glitter right on it, because I'm kind of dragging it through the resin. And I don't worry about getting resin into my glitter. That's just me. I find that it mostly sticks back to the toothpick, so I haven't really had a problem with it gunking up my glitter. I'm just going to go all the way around the edges.
Shannon, as you're working through that, would you wait for each layer to cure or to kind of set, or do you want them to kind of merge together?
For me, for this one, I just do it all at once because I like the effect that it gives for a geode to kind of let them go between. But again, it's personal preference. You could try it both ways and decide which way you like it best. You might like it better if they're really defined rings. These kind of go all into each other. Okay, I'm gonna do a little black line. So you can see that how that glitter is kind of floating on there now. Okay, here's my black line. I'm just gonna drag it on there. You can kind of see how it's gonna go. I'm gonna do a thin line with this black this time. I like that with the same dyes, I'm getting a totally different look because the mica powder comes with pink, red, kind of a purpley blue, and then a teal. And so it's a really good color spectrum for doing geodes. And I like the shine that it gives it. Okay, not perfect. You can see I dropped a little bit of black right there. I'll show you how to fix that. Just take a little bit of clear and move your white back over to it and it's gone. Little tip. Okay, so now I'm gonna do a red layer and then I'm gonna show you my finished one and some other things that I did. So I would just keep going like this and pouring in circles. So here's my red layer. Ooh, look how pretty that is. I love that mica powder. So pretty. You can pour over the resin. You can create a little barrier with clear if you ever want a little barrier.
And Shannon, you just have about 3 minutes just so
Okay.
you're aware.
Okay, so see, I would keep going like that and hit it with my heat tool. And do more and more layers. So now I'm going to show you what my finished one looks like. Here's the finished one. So you can see that I went back in with those pink foil flakes. I just let it kind of move and I tipped and I added some more of the stones right up in there. Love how it turned out. So this could be, if you wanted it to be flat and not have these be raised because they are kind of bumpy, you could do just a clear layer over the top and then it's flat. Or you can just leave it looking three-dimensional like that. Okay, so now I want to show you what we made with our extras real quick. Okay, so our barrette mold. So here's the barrette mold that I did. So this is my leftover from my geode, my ocean heart, and my other one. I'm going to take my gloves off so I don't get these finished ones sticky. Okay, so there's my barrette from the, I don't know if you can see that. There's my barrette from the geode pour. Here's the one from the ocean pour. I didn't put any gold in that one, but here's how hard they are. They don't bend, they're just plastic. And here's my leftovers from my little tray. And then I would just put the little clips on them. These are the square ones, but you can see that the clip is just on the back and they're ready to go. I wanted to show you this other mold. I actually made this with some leftovers from an ocean pour. This is the heart mold and it separates a little different than most. It comes apart into 2 pieces and it makes this little round dish. Now this one I would trim up because it had a little leakage there. But again, just use a little bit of sandpaper. And that's the 3rd little dish that's in your dish molds. Other things I've made with leftovers are bangle bracelets. So these are some bangle bracelets. Michael's carries this bangle bracelet mold and it doesn't take very much resin in there to get this awesome set of bracelets. You can see. Those are just all leftover pieces. And then this fun thing I tried this time, this was a pendant that I made with leftover pieces from the ocean mold, leftover resin. And then this time I had these little wooden hexagons just in my scrapbooking stuff. And I took the extra that landed on my mat and I just took these and I dipped them into the resin and they dried and they turned out so cool. So now these little guys I can use on scrapbooking or cards and they turned out so cool. So there's so many fun things you can do. This one has an artificial flower in it. This is a new mold that Michael's has. It's a sphere mold. So you can see that there's a artificial flower suspended in that clear resin in this sphere. There's so many things you can do. There's bangle bracelets. This is a new mold. This is all the kinds of confetti with just clear resin in a bangle bracelet. So don't waste your scraps. Have fun with it. Seriously, you can make all kinds of fun things with resin. Just don't be afraid of it. That would be my final tip. Don't be afraid of trying resin. Just make sure you wear gloves and that you wear an apron, and then just start playing and see what you come up with, because everything that turns out is always surprisingly beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Rachel. This was awesome. Everybody seems to be loving it. Great questions from everybody. We did get an answer on the food safe, just so everybody knows. There are some resins that are food safe. We do not recommend it with our specific product, just we want you guys to be safe. So thanks for asking. Thanks for joining. We're gonna have jewelry classes coming up soon, more resin, baking projects, all good things to keep you guys busy. So check back at michaels.com/classes. You can find our upcoming classes and this video anytime later today or tomorrow. So thank you guys.